In our first Croc video, we tried to beat the game while avoiding all gobbos, all crystals, every heart, and every box. Things have changed on this channel since then. We get max percent in our challenge runs nowadays, and since Argonaut Games were kind enough to send me a download code for Croc Remaster, I think it's time to revisit our original idea. Can you beat Croc Legend of the Gobbos Remaster without collecting crystals? Let's find out. Here are the rules, but first we're going to move on to a new game for a moment, and I think it's one you need to hear about, Crystal of Atlan. It's a very cool looking magic punk MMO action RPG. It's available to download now for Google Play, iOS, PC and PlayStation 5. I'm a console player myself, so when I heard this game is on PS5 and it's completely free to download, that was all I needed to hear. The game sends you on a fantastical journey in a world run on both magic and technology, and it's our job to discover its secrets. There are 11 classes to choose from right away, there are no gacha elements here, and there are over 20 skill combinations for each class. Speaking of combos, it's the combat where this game shines. It's smooth, it's fluid, it's fast-paced, it's satisfying, and it's fun. Whether you're a Magiblade swordsman, a gunslinger musketeer, or one of the newest classes, a Starbreaker fighter, this game easily has the coolest looking combo-based combat I've seen in years. It doesn't matter whether you're on the ground or in the air, you can really keep these combos going. Plus, they're adding a whole new class, introducing Mistrix, a musketeer whose weapon case also transforms into a motorcycle. So this brings us up to 12 classes. Players can connect with each other and take on co-op dungeons or compete against each other in PvP arenas, either in 1v1 or 3v3 modes. Also, up until the 26th of July, Crystal of Atlan are running a collaboration with hit anime One Punch Man. If you join the game now, you'll get a whole bunch of collab rewards for free, including a transformation badge to become Saitama himself. They're also adding an antagonist from the One Punch Man universe as a new raid boss, Boros. Remember, this collab event is only available until the 26th of July, so download the game right now for free on either Google Play, iOS, PC or PlayStation 5 and dive into the world of Atlan. Thank you Crystal of Atlan for the fun game, and thank you for sponsoring this video. Back to the rules. Rule number 1, we cannot collect any normal crystals. Rule number 2, glitches are fine, just no hacking. And finally, rule number 3, once we defeat the final boss, Baron Dante, we win! The first thing I wanted to mention about the remaster is that there is a trophy for beating 5 levels without collecting any crystals, and a small part of me likes to think that our original Croc challenge run helped to inspire that idea. As we mentioned in the intro, we're aiming for the maximum possible completion percentage. This means that the main differences between our original video and this one is that we will be rescuing every gobbo, collecting every jigsaw piece, and will even attempt to collect every heart. This also means that we will be allowed to collect the 5 coloured crystals on every main level, although it needs to be said early on that some of the coloured crystals are disguised as normal crystals until you collect them. The first example of this is right at the start of the game behind this rock. Normally, coloured crystals don't add to your total crystal count, but the disguised ones do. This means that the disguised coloured crystals are the only exceptions to the first rule. We can tell the difference between a normal crystal and a disguised coloured crystal because the disguised ones don't move up and down anywhere near as fast as the normal ones. Something else to note, if we don't have any normal crystals at all, then the crystal icon on the heads-up display will stay in the top left with a 0 at all times. As soon as we collect even a single normal crystal or a disguised coloured crystal, the icon will disappear from the heads-up display. We will also need a way to check the contents of boxes without collecting them. Stomping on the boxes is the only way to break them, but thankfully we can stomp on the corner and land near the contents without collecting them. We want to find the first secret room in the game. We need to make it over to this floating platform, being careful not to touch the crystals, and then stomp on this platform 3 times. This warps us to a secret room that contains 3 hearts. Secret rooms like this are pretty much only for hearts that give us extra lives. There is this actually a password we can input that gives us infinite lives? It's purely a time save in this run, since it is possible to farm hearts infinitely anyway, but be warned, this also disables the trophies and achievements. We can use this sparkle to warp back out to the starting area, and thankfully it puts us on the ground and not on the platform with the crystal on it. In fact, that platform is gone now and the crystal has fallen down to the ground. Inside the well, the crystals are easy to avoid, and we rescue the gobbo. Every main level has 6 gobbos to rescue, and the 6th one is almost always behind the coloured crystal door at the end of the level that requires the 5 coloured crystals to open. We can avoid the crystals on the log with a couple of well-placed jumps, but then the next room is a bit more challenging. We need to stand on the very edge of all these platforms. As the crystal's hitbox is deceptively big, we grab the green crystal on the way by. Also, since normal crystals work as our health in this game, we will die in a single hit. There are no more normal crystals blocking the remaining collectibles, so we can enter the crystal door. Right away, we see 2 bouncy jellies with crystals floating above them, except there is a key above the crystals on the right side. We need that key to rescue the last gobbo in the level. We can bounce on the side of the jelly to avoid the crystals, but we can't reach the key like this without touching a crystal. There is a way to bounce higher than intended on these jellies by pressing the jump button on the same frame that we land on the jelly. There's even an audio cue if we time it right. Croc will make his usual jumping sound. This seems to be the only way to bounce over the crystals and grab the key, but even this didn't seem to be working. Eventually, we seem to bounce on the sweet spot on the jelly where we can just touch the key's hitbox and still avoid all 3 crystals. I can't believe that worked. With that, we can complete this level 100%. There's even a heart hiding behind this rock. At the start of the next level, we climb up to find a single disguised coloured crystal hiding among the normal ones. There are 4 boxes inside the well. After we use them as platforms to reach the collectibles above, we only need to break the left box on the floor. Knowing what boxes to break open ahead of time is very helpful. These 3 normal crystals are easy enough to avoid, and that brings us to the crystal door. There is a tall stack of boxes, and the bottom one contains the final gobbo. The rest all contain crystals. It's impossible to stomp a box without collecting the crystals inside the previous box. However, if we break the top box and then fall all the way down to the floor, we can exit the room and then re-enter to despawn the crystals. Since the box that we broke stays broken, we can repeat this over and over, and eventually we can rescue the 6th gobbo at the bottom. There is a disguised crystal over the lava, and we can get warped to another secret room with the sparkles behind this rock. The crystals are easy to avoid in here, and there are a couple of hearts for us to grab. There's a follow the box minigame down the well. Which one do you reckon the gobbo's in? If you said the left, then well done. There's a staircase of boxes that we need to use to climb up top, but after we have what we need up here, we can ignore all the boxes as they all contain normal crystals. The final gobbo in the crystal door is earned with a sheep popping minigame, so no crystals involved here. Now we're on the first boss level. There are no required collectibles on these levels, so all we'll be grabbing are the hearts. This also means that we can avoid all boxes without worry of them containing anything we need. The boss fights are pretty much exactly the same as they were on PS1, except they have health bars now. If you want the same PS1 experience, there is a visual glitch that removes the health bars. Just pause the game, open the control settings, then unpause the game. Simple as that. Since we got 100% completion on the 3 levels before the boss level, we unlock a secret level. There are 8 of these secret levels in total, and we want to complete all of them too. Each secret level contains a jigsaw piece, and usually some hearts. There are plenty of normal crystals to get in our way, but we can jump in between them all. But then, as we go through a door, Croc is forced to walk into a normal crystal. If there is ever a room that has a crystal right in front of the door, Croc is forced to collect that crystal during during its forced walk animation. I spam just about every button on the controller in hopes that I could interrupt the walk animation, but no joy. It's a required door if we want to reach the jigsaw piece too, so if we want 100% completion, I'm afraid this will have to become a minimum crystal challenge. We can take damage intentionally if we want to remove the crystal from our inventory though. It doesn't stop there either. If we grab the key in this level, which is behind an optional door, when we try to return to the previous room, we're forced into another crystal. Thankfully, the keys in secret levels always lead to hearts and not the jigsaw pieces themselves, so if we ignore the key entirely, we can grab the jigsaw piece and beat this level in just a single crystal. The beginning of the next level has a square of crystals, and we can see that one of them is in disguise. When there is a box on a floating platform, there's no room to land to the side of the box after stomping it, unless we park the moving platform right next to the box. Fortunately, we don't need to worry about that this time, as we need to break both of these boxes anyway. There's a disguised crystal in the middle of this path, and this gets us inside the crystal door. There's a row of floating boxes. All we need to do is break the first box, ignore the rest, and fall down to rescue the final gobbo. This balloon will carry us through a long line of crystals if we grab it. We can just skip this room by falling over the edge and landing down here, but we need to get to the platform at the end of this room as there is a disguised crystal over there. There's only one way to get to that platform in this run. We need to use a glitch that returns from the PS1 version, the hover jump. This glitch allows Croc to float in midair during a jump. This is done by interrupting Croc's stomp animation. To perform the hover jump, we need to jump, then use the square button to tail whip. Directly following this, we press and hold the X button to stomp. If we timed it right, the stomp animation doesn't finish, and Croc can stay suspended in the air for 2 or 3 seconds. There's only a small window to press and hold the X button, and depending on the frame we get it on, the longer we can stay suspended. However, the gap we need to cross is still too far even for the longest hover jump. So we need to combine the hover jump with diagonal movement. If Croc is able to move diagonally, he travels slightly faster. This isn't really possible on foot, but during a hover, it is. If we use the D-pad instead of the analog stick, we can control Croc with his original tank controls. Using tank controls during a hover allows us to move Croc diagonally towards our goal. With the perfect hover, we are just able to reach the platform while avoiding all normal crystals and collect the disguised crystal. There's an awkward center ledge with a circle of crystals on it, but it's not too difficult to avoid them. The moving platform can be guided in between these crystals, and in the crystal door, none of the boxes need to be broken as the key is just floating up here. At the start of the next level, there's a stack of 3 boxes next to a well. We want to free the gobbo in the bottom box, but the other 2 boxes contain crystals. We can break one and then enter the well to despawn the crystals. After despawning the crystals from the first 2 boxes, we can rescue another gobbo. The final area doesn't have any crystals in it at all. We can grab everything we need and move on to the crystal door. There's an underwater section with many crystals in it, so we keep to the side to avoid them all. That brings us to the second boss level. Right at the start, we can actually break this rock with a stomp to reveal a warp to a secret room. As far as I'm aware, that is the only one of those rocks we can break like that. The room has a lot of these giant worm enemies in it, but it also has a heart above each one that we can bounce up to. Once again, boss levels don't have any required collectibles, so we can pretty much ignore any boxes we see. We use the control menu to remove the boss's health bar again. I just kind of prefer it that way. This unlocks the second secret level. We find a key early on and avoid some awkward crystals. There's a couple of even more awkward crystals on these floating platforms, especially considering the second platform spins around. Our solution here is to perform a perfect hover jump all the way to the furthest platform. This takes us to the top. We're free to use the key on this door and climb the spiral of moving platforms to find 2 more hearts. We drop back down, making sure not to land on a crystal, grab the second jigsaw piece and move on to the second island. On to the next world. There are monkey bars over the deadly icy water. We need the disguised crystal underneath them, but if we use the monkey bars, there are 2 normal crystals in the way. We can't climb around them, but we had an idea. We enter the next room and use this box to reach another disguised crystal. Since it was a disguised crystal, it adds a normal crystal to our inventory. This now gives us a legal damage boost that we can can use to grab the first disguised crystal. Even though we die right afterwards, as long as we had more than one life remaining, we get to keep the coloured crystal. In the final room, there are more monkey bars with a crystal blocking the way. It's very close, but you can just grab the edge of the monkey bars and get on top of them. The disguised crystal is easy to grab from this side. The crystal door just contains a platforming challenge with no crystals out in the open, so we move on. There's an isolated platform with a gobbo on it. We're supposed to get the key to open the cage to press a button to spawn some platforms, but we decided to just hover jump over there. We do need one of these crystals, as it's actually the green one. In this room, there is a hidden grey platform very low down. If we land on it, we get warped to a secret room. There are some crystals in our way here, and it's very easy to slip off these ledges in the icy levels, but a couple of hover jumps get us to the heart no problem. The yellow crystal is surrounded by normal crystals, so we need to be very careful to reach it. Thankfully, when we want to leave the area, we can just run around the spinning gear. There is a minigame behind the crystal door, but we have a problem. The minigame requires us to move the cauldron left and right to catch crystals. If we catch enough of them, the final gobbo is our reward. However, when we catch a crystal, it is then added to our inventory. The gobbo doesn't even spawn until we complete this minigame. I try to justify this to myself by saying that Croc isn't actually touching the crystals, but I would understand if you think that sounds like an excuse. So either we can only get 5 out of the 6 gobbos on this level, or we add 28 more crystals to our total so far. There are some crystals in our way when platforming to this key, but nothing we can't handle. The yellow crystal is in between 2 other crystals, so we grab this one carefully. The last gobbo is beyond several icy platforms with no crystals in our way. The boss level has literally 0 crystals out in the open. They're all in boxes, so all very easy to avoid. The boss is nothing to write home about either. In fact, I would say the ladybird boss was more difficult. The secret level at least has some crystals in our way, most notably the ones on this bridge. It is possible to stand on the very edge of the bridge, but it's also much easier to hover jump to the ledge beyond the bridge instead. This is also where we learned that baiting out the enemy's attacks before rushing in is the best idea. There's a heart inside the final box in this level, and with that we have the third jigsaw piece. The most obvious secret room in the whole game is in the next level. The warp point is just out in the open. This gets us several more hearts. Imagine if the developers put crystals on these small platforms in the cave section. That would have been a big problem. This is an easy level for us, as none of the collectibles we need are behind any crystals. In fact, the crystal door section might be the easiest in the entire game. It's just one single enemy that we take out immediately. We see a pit of crystals, and we want the one in the center, as that's the one in disguise. We fall down onto it and very carefully use the moving platform to get back up without touching any other crystal. This brings us to what must be the only quote-unquote mandatory gobbo in the entire game. It directly blocks our path by being in the center of a small platform, but since we're rescuing all the gobbos in this run, we don't have to hover over him this time. Before breaking any of these boxes, we grab the key in the next area and then return to unlock the button from its cage. This spawns platforms under each box, and the only box we need to break is in the middle. The following area provides a challenge. We need to avoid these crystals as we cross these platforms by standing on the very edge. This is when we notice that sometimes there are shadows there where there shouldn't be. There's definitely nothing above this platform. The crystal door has several crystals inside, but they're all easily avoided. We made the mistake of breaking this box directly above another gobbo, but once again, we can despawn these crystals by entering a door and returning. Both the box and its crystals have despawned. The outside area has another secret grey platform far below that warps us to a very easy 4 hearts. No crystals in sight. There's a row of crystals up this ramp, and the middle one is in disguise. After entering the next door, Croc is forced into a crystal, just like the first secret level. And this is another door we're forced to go through to progress the game. This is the exact same crystal we were forced to collect in the PS1 version when we did this run on that game. And there's still no way to interrupt our walking animation. So this is the second crystal that Croc is forced to touch. But if you include the 28 crystals from the catching minigame, game. That's a total of 30 crystals in the game so far. Next, there is a set of monkey bars with several crystals along it, but we only want the disguised one at the end. However, we can just about stand on the gong underneath, just long enough to get a jump from it, and we can use it to reach the coloured crystal. The crystal door has the gobbo surrounded by worms and crystals, but we were able to avoid them all and rescue him no problem. Always being one hit away from death does start to get a bit frustrating, especially in areas like this. This was one of the more memorable boss fights for me, but once again, who needs health bars? I always assumed you weren't able to attack them during their rolling attacks when I was a kid, but sure enough, you can. The secret level starts with a couple of bridges. We can either stand on the very edges and jump across, or we can just hover around the bridge. I get sniped a bunch more times, grab a heart, and make it to the end of the level, which is a giant drop onto a pit of floating platforms and crystals. If we just fall all the way down, Croc will actually die, so we carefully make our way down, taking care to avoid all crystals, and then collect the jigsaw piece at the bottom. World 3 now, we start off with no crystals out in the open. There is one under these monkey bars blocking a key, but it's a disguised crystal anyway. There's a bouncy jelly in the next room, and if we stomp on it 3 times, we're warped to another secret area. There are 4 hearts to grab here in the 4 corners, with the exit being on the top center. Back where we were, after we spawn these platforms under these 3 boxes, we only want to break the left and the right ones. It's the crystal door that provides our biggest challenge in the run so far, our first ghost race. The idea is to race a ghost to the end of the area. If the ghost beats us there, it despawns a key that we need to rescue the last gobbo. But the whole area is full of crystals. What's more, it's not obvious which direction we're supposed to go either because it's so dark. We need to meticulously avoid every single crystal and win the race at the same time. It was tough, but once we worked out which way to go, we pulled it off after a few tries. Next, there are several crystals in our way under these monkey bars. It's a bit too high to get on top of the monkey bars, but the nearby moving platform can be used to get up there. We can just hover our way to the floating box to remove the need to hit the button in this room, which also means we don't need to use this key to unlock a button either. Thankfully, these monkey bars are low enough to get on top of from the ground. There's a disguised purple crystal in the water section, which I missed the first time I played this level. We also don't need to grab the underwater key if we don't want to, since we saved the key from the start of the level. We then get sniped mere millimeters away from the exit. There's a heart right at the end of the level and a crystal door that leads to another ghost race. There are a lot more small platforms with crystals on this time, and travelling across these carefully at speed is a lot harder than it looks. However, the ghost will despawn the crystals as it passes through them. This gets them out of our way, so sometimes it's best to stay behind the ghost at first, let it remove some of the more awkward crystals, and then take over. Further on in the race, there are tiny platforms with a crystal on. We're never getting across these platforms, so we use a quick hover jump to get by them. Hover jumps can be used at the very end for a good shortcut too. If we grab the key at the end but then lose a life, we get to keep the key after we respawn. So now we can take our time and just go straight to the cage. We need to cross a room filled with lava using some moving platforms. It's not too difficult, but at the end we can see 2 boxes on top of each other. We need the green crystal inside the bottom one, but we don't want the normal crystals inside the top one. Since these boxes are on a small floating platform, we wouldn't just be able to stomp the top box and then fall to the side like usual. Instead, we need to stand on the very tip of this corner and then wait for the exact moment that the moving platform is about to be as close as possible. Even if it looks like we're close enough to the edge, it only works if we are as close to the edge as possible. Only then can we stomp the box and just grab the edge of the moving platform as we fall. Now we can travel back the way we came and use a door to despawn the normal crystals and then return to collect the green crystal. It was at this point we realized that if we break a box that contains a colored crystal, but we die before we collect that crystal, the box has respawned, but when we return, the colored crystal has not respawned. The box is now empty, unless you count the butterfly that comes out. I'm pretty sure this is not supposed to happen with the boxes that contain coloured crystals. I also don't remember this ever happening on the PS1 version, but I might be wrong. Anyway, we started the level all over again and got the green crystal this time. The rest of this level can be played very casually as there are no crystals out in the open until we reach the crystal door. It's another ghost race, and as soon as we spawn into the area, we collect a crystal immediately. The game spawns us right on top of a crystal. Since this is a crystal door area, it's not required to beat this ghost race to continue the game, so this crystal is avoidable, but since we would like to get 100% completion, we will add it to our total. We managed to find a key without collecting any other crystals. Avoiding the crystals on the monkey bars was difficult, but at this point we can just let the ghost despawn all the crystals for us. The balloon tries to land us on top of a crystal, but we can just land next to it instead, and finally we find the gong. The boss level is hardly even worth mentioning. There's a heart behind this electric fence, and the boss fight itself is even easier than some of the previous bosses. The secret level has plenty of crystals in it. They start off being very avoidable, but avoiding this one proved to be annoying. It took a couple of precise jumps, but we managed it in the end. And we jumped into the well, only to be dropped on a long line of crystals, which, thankfully, after respawning, can be avoided if we move right away. And that's another jigsaw piece. The very beginning of the next level, 3-4, is perfect for demonstrating the despawning coloured crystal. This box right at the start contains the red crystal. If we death abuse after breaking the box respawns as we do, but now it's empty. And if we want that crystal back, we have to restart the level. There's a set of monkey bars with 3 crystals under it, but we only want the middle one as it's the green crystal. This requires a fairly tricky hover jump, but we got it surprisingly quick. This button in a cage reveals some platforms that leads to a gobbo, but there are crystals in our way. It was only after hitting the button I realised I could have stood on top of the cage and then hovered to the gobbo instead. We'll have to do it the hard way. We take great care not to accidentally touch a crystal, and we hover to the end. Hovering gets us the next gobbo too, and that brings us to the crystal door. The path is littered with crystals, and several hover jumps are needed to get across these gaps. We failed this a couple of times, but it was then we realised that the end of this ghost race is actually very close to the start. We turn around and the final ledge is right in front of us. In fact, we don't even need to hover jump to make it there. A well-timed normal jump still gets us over there. This final ledge even has the key, the cage, and the gong all right next to each other. Why did they do this? There's another hidden grey platform right at the start of the next level, so that's a few more easy hearts. We can see that the balloon here would send us right through many crystals. Thank goodness none of them are coloured. We can use a diagonal hover jump from the top of the cage to make it all the way over without using the balloon. The second balloon doesn't go through any crystals, but when we enter this well, we are dropped right onto a crystal. We need to press the jump button right as we exit the well to land a bit further forward, and this avoids the crystal. When it comes to the floating boxes, the only one we need to break is this one. There is a tiny platform with a single crystal on it. On the PS1, this was quite difficult without hovering, but this is actually a disguised crystal, so we can just grab it this time around. In the next area with the moving wooden platforms, we noticed that one of the platforms moved a lot further out than usual. Normally these platforms would despawn when they get to the end of their cycle, but this one just seems to keep going. I reloaded the room to see if it would happen again, and sure enough, for just this one single platform, it's consistent. So you know I had to ride it this time. I'll speed up the footage here as it was literally 10 minutes of waiting for something to happen. We can see that the main part of the area deloaded the further away we got on our magic carpet ride. I hoped we would eventually clip right through the skybox and see a whole new world, but I'm not sure this game works like that. After literally 10 minutes, the platform despawned as normal and we died. We come to another area that I remembered from the PS1 run. 3 small pillars ascending upwards, each with a normal crystal on top of it. On the PS1, we were just able to stand on the very edge of this pillar without collecting the crystal, but we just couldn't replicate that on the remaster. Even if we changed the graphics back to the classic look, this didn't seem to change the collision at all. It took a lot of attempts, but the only way we managed to get over there is with the most optimal hover jump in the entire run. It had to be from this angle with diagonal movement, and even then, we were only just able to grab the edge. edge. That brings us to the next ghost race. We turn right at the fork on the monkey bars as this takes us to the end. It was fairly simple from there. Hover jumps are very helpful at the start of the next level. Thank goodness we can go over the top of these monkey bars. And this well doesn't try to land us on a crystal. The rest of the level is very straightforward. No normal crystals in our way until the crystal door section. It's the final ghost race in the game, and as such, it's the most difficult. It's full of crystals, several of them being over tiny platforms. Some of these obstacles can be hovered over, but there are some parts that can't be cleared with a hover jump. We need to let the ghost despawn a lot of these crystals for us. This might seem we're going to let the ghost win the race, but what's very useful is that when the ghost despawns a crystal, it slows the ghost down. This makes keeping up with the ghost easier, and we can quickly overtake the ghost towards the end to grab the key. This might be the easiest boss level in the game. No normal crystals in our way whatsoever. 2 hearts to grab and we're at the end. The difference between this boss and the other bosses is that there are crystals within the boss arena itself, so we just need to take care to avoid them during the fight. This still isn't too difficult though. The secret room has some challenging platform in it, so thank goodness there are no crystals in our way during this. There are several hearts to grab along the way though. After a quick water section, we have the jigsaw piece. The final world now. There's another series of crystals in our way, but since we want the middle one, we just hover over this. We used a hover jump to skip over this cog puzzle on the PS1 as we were avoiding all boxes, but since there are no normal crystals in this room, we can play this normally. Even the cave area lacks any normal crystals. The next level starts off with another hidden grey platform. This warps us to a secret area with some hearts in, but when we leave the secret area, we are dropped right onto a crystal. If we react fast enough, we can just fall to the side and land next to the crystal instead. It was still close though. We come to the thin bridges with crystals on them, but we can just stand on the thin wooden railings. You know what? These 2 enemies have killed me so many times as a kid, it's now time to get revenge. We hover jump over there and take them both out. We need to grab the crystal at the back here along with the key. We need to follow the box with the goblin with our eyes. Which one do you think it's in? The first time I played this level, I actually did choose the wrong box, and it gives you a heart instead as a constellation prize. If that happens, we don't get a second chance, so we have to restart the level. After this, unfortunately, there is another crystal catching mini game. If we miss even a single crystal, we don't get the gobbo at the end. Once again, either we consider this gobbo impossible, or we let it slide since Croc isn't actually touching the crystals. The third option would be to rescue the gobbo and add 35 crystals to our total. We burst some Grim Reapers for another gobbo, and then when we come to the fork at the end of the road, we choose the left door. It just so happens this was the right way to the end of the level. We can't even backtrack, so we didn't even find out what was behind the other doors. We already have all the gobbos and the coloured crystals in this level, so we know that none of those are in the other doors. I had to start the level over again to find out for myself. It turns out those other 2 rooms are filled with nightmare fuel. I've never seen this before, not even on the PS1 version. I know this because if I had seen this on the PS1, I never would have slept as a kid. The boss level seems to give us an enemy that can disappear and reappear right in front of our eyes. Not being able to stand in the middle of these shrinking platforms does make this a bit more difficult, but it's not too bad. This also might be the new easiest boss so far. The secret level requires us to break boxes to make the enemies fall to their demise. There's not a single loose crystal in this entire level. It's ironic that the game tries to make the levels harder by reducing the number of crystals, but in this run it ends up making things easier. We start the next level with a hover jump to avoid a crystal, but we do need this one as it's the red one. There's a very awkward set of monkey bars with crystals blocking our path, and we can't get on top of them. We have no choice but to use the hover jump to get around them, but there is one crystal we do need. Once we're on the platform closest to it, we need to perform a very tricky hover jump. So we enter the nearby door first for a checkpoint in case we mess this up. We need to hover into the crystal and then quickly move back to our starting platform before we fall. A bit trickier than it looks. I've always wanted to stand on the decorative parts in this room, and with a hover jump, I finally can. Nothing happens, I've just always wanted to do it. Thank goodness for the hover jump, it really comes in handy in this level. It's the only reason I was able to get to the end of this room. We used the door at the end for another checkpoint checkpoint. There is another coloured crystal that we need. This one is dangerous because there are a few normal crystals in the way. If we accidentally collect a normal crystal and a coloured crystal together, we have to start the whole level over again. As long as we have a spare extra life, we can hover to the coloured crystal and take the death afterwards. We still keep the coloured crystal. With no more loose crystals after this room, we move on. There's a lengthy section where we fight a whole bunch of pirate enemies on a falling platform. This happens multiple times in this level, but interestingly, there is a way to skip all of them. Before that though, there's a secret room. We get warped there if we stomp on this far platform 3 times. The secret room is heavy on both crystals and platforming, but the crystals are fairly easy to avoid at least. Leaving the secret area drops us onto a crystal again, and this is exactly how we discovered that we could skip the pirate fights. If we fall over the edge and die, Croc respawns high in the air and falls down again into the room. As we're falling, we can fall over the edge again before we hit the ground. This prevents the death plane from killing us a second time, and we can fall all the way down to the bottom, skipping the entire pirate fight. We discovered this for ourselves because we were trying not to land on a crystal after leaving the secret room, but it turns out this is a simple speedrun technique as well. The next room has a big moving floor, and it ended up raising us right into a crystal at one point. This makes dodging the crystals a fair challenge this time, although some of the crystals are disguised, so we need to keep an eye out for those ones. The penultimate level is heavy on the platforming, but very light on the crystals. In fact, I don't think there is a single loose crystal in this whole level. That brings us to the final boss level, and it turns out the final boss isn't Baron Dante, it's these stairs. Several sets of staircases all littered with crystals, and barely enough room between them to avoid collecting them. I nearly pulled my hair out when I did this on the PS1, and back then I had save states. Unlike the bridge from earlier, we cannot stand on the railings of these staircases. They are actually tall, invisible walls. This is where Croc's old controls come in handy. In fact, when using the analog controls, touching the railings can make Croc move erratically like this. The D-pad still allows for tank control movement, and the bumper buttons make Croc sidestep slowly. This helps us be very precise with our positioning before we commit to a jump. What's more, the swinging spike balls have far bigger hitboxes than you'd expect. Speaking of hitboxes, Croc's hitbox moves around as he runs, and sometimes this allows us to run right by some of the crystals. This is far from consistent though, and it doesn't work a lot more than it does. We did find out that we could sometimes skip right by 3 crystals at once if we were lucky enough. It took a lot of practice, but it is possible to get all the way to the top of these staircases without collecting a single crystal. We just need to make sure we don't get caught out by the moving platform at the top when we get up there. We had to turn the camera to get a shot of the whole room with all the crystals still there, of course. This brings us to the most pitiful final boss fight I have ever seen. I can literally stand still and watch him run headfirst into the wall. At least his phase 2 actually makes me move a bit, but he's still no threat. That brings us to the final secret level in the game. There are plenty of crystals lying around on the beaten path, but the corridors are wide enough to run alongside them all. There's a line of crystals on a shrinking platform too, but it's not that hard. So that is the final jigsaw piece secured. This spawns the secret 5th island world with 5 more levels, so let's beat them too. There are no gobbos or coloured crystals in this world, so we avoid all crystals and just get to the end. If that means using hover jumps to make our life easier, then so be it. I'm very surprised Croc's tail didn't touch a crystal here. It's the level's finale that proves to be a challenge. Avoiding crystals is one thing, but avoiding death from the enemies that fire projectiles at the same time is another. We take advantage of the fact that we can't be hit if we wait on this platform and time our jump attack just right, only to be sniped by the second enemy. We pulled it off again, took our time, and defeated the second enemy too, only for the ledge grab to not grab the ledge. 3rd time's the charm though. The crystals aren't even the challenge in the next level, it's all the enemies sniping us during the platforming sections. Patience is a virtue however, we can just bait an attack from the enemy if we're on the very edge 3 platforms away. This cave section alone would make a pacifist run of this game a nightmare. The next level has some crystals in our way, and the enemies like to snipe us during our hover jumps. With crystal dodging along thin platforms in the dark with sniping enemies, and this level was quite stressful. Even the gong is surrounded by crystals. We can still hit it without touching them though. The final level isn't as stressful as the stairs, but there are still plenty of crystals to dodge on moving platforms. But that brings us to the true final boss. And it seems I was wrong earlier. This is actually the easiest final boss I've ever played. You just need to hit the 4 gongs one after the other. And even though there are moving floating platforms, we can reach each gong with just a normal jump. In fact, the developers must have realised how easy the final boss really was, because they added new achievements to the GOG version of this game. And one of those achievements was to defeat the final boss without jumping. The new achievements must have released too early though, because they've already been removed at the time of recording. But hey, let's give it a try, maybe it'll prove to be a good challenge. Oh. Turns out you can just run over the corners without even needing to jump. This makes the fight just as easy as it always was, and maybe even quicker. Looks like this fight was just destined to be easy. So, can you beat the Croc Remaster without collecting any crystals? Nope. If you're going for 100% completion, Croc must touch at least 3 normal crystals, and that is only if you don't count the crystals obtained in the 2 crystal catching minigames. If you include those crystals, the total becomes 66. If you're not going for 100%, then the minimum is just 1, the same one in our original Croc run on PS1. Thank you for watching, I hope this was still interesting despite the failure. If you enjoyed challenge runs on classic PlayStation games, then please subscribe, it's pretty much all we do here. I need to thank Tor for their help in mapping this run out. And speaking of thanking people, I must also thank our biggest supporters. They are Aki, Alex Back, Alexa Griffith, Ashlu, Austin Stein, Azzy, Bashkar, Blood Moon, Bobasti, Candy Ibarra, Clara B, CTD, Dakota Steele, Danny Goro, Dice Goblin, Dr. Wolfenhausen, Emperor Prime, Fister Knightley, Floop, Frightening, Garg, Beatnik, GB John, Gingy Ginge, Greed Souls, Grey's Agenda, Griffey, Hannibal Lar, Harleen Quinzel, Harpinger, Hitagi Worshipper, I've Been Burgled, Gel Hustinks, Justin Becker, Cola Ero, Lightning Salmon, Maureen Jansen, Nick CF, Notarn, Owl Ottle, Redonkalooz, Roger Klotz, Rocket Plod, Salkin, Serenity, Sergeant Goodnug, Spectrum Z, Store King, The Overachiever, Tyler Hancock, Vivius Vicious, Will Calder, Waffales, Admiral Lettuce, Outie Biscuit, Chrome Shack, Dweegi, Einsamer Kex, Finn Pride and Pixels, $40 Mouse, Hakey Joey, Hamscoffer, Jesus Christ 00AD, John Fitz, Callum Fragger, Cami7, Lacerated Hunter, Lunar Isle, Magin Mig Mig, McDevy Pants, Mebby Man, Mousy Micah, Porge, Potoma 13, R&R, Rev Jacques, Running Groan, Smegzilla, Spectrum Z90, Static Jokes, The Overachiever, The Jammy Emperor, Tor DS, Tauster, True DK0, Username JP, A Lazy Dragon, Aggie, Anthony Kermack, Apollo, Bob, Bobastix, Intervention, Melfi, NV Prod, Song of Shadows, Thomas Bickley, Tor, and Wesley Austin. Praise be thy names. If you did want to see the PS1 version of this run, then I will link it on screen right now, but just be aware it was the first video on this channel, so it's probably not aged crazy well in the editing department. And heck, if we're linking old videos, why not our old Rayman challenge run videos as well? Give those a try. Thanks for sending me this game, Argonaut. That was good of you. If you remaster Croc 2, I'll make a video on that one as well.